Well, welcome everybody. I like that new music, Rebecca. Thank you for that. We are thrilled to have you here with us today. This is our first time we're actually going to do a photo organizing project where you can actually watch it happen in real time, which I'm really excited about. It's new for us. And so if you've had questions about how to organize your printed photos, don't worry, you're going to learn all about that today. Please subscribe and like our YouTube channel if you haven't done that yet. It's really important for us to help grow this channel and let more people know about the fun things that we do. And so you can also download your free cheat sheet, the 5 steps to organizing your photos. The link should be in the video description. And we're going to now bring on Sandra Williams, who's joining us from her home studio. And she lives in Vienna, Virginia. I'm wondering if you got a bunch of snow today.
No, we got nothing. It's all in the southern part of Virginia and the southeast part of Virginia.
Okay.
It's crazy.
She is the founder of Infinity Photo Solutions. She has been a member of the Photo Manager since 2013. So she goes back to the original people starting this whole amazing business. She is an instructor of our pro level course called Organizing Your Clients' Printed Photos, which is part of membership if you join the Photo Managers. She's also a certified photo manager and a certified privacy advocate. So what's going to happen is Sandra's going to guide us through the photo organizing process and demonstrate each step live. So this is our first time doing that. We're excited. And so please ask questions throughout the chat where we'll be able to answer that in real time for you. And so let's just start with this question. Why do you think printed photo organizing is so important, especially for people who have inherited boxes and boxes of photos?
I think that it's important because you're preserving your family history, right? So photos help tell your stories. And I like the fact that photos connect families. If you've ever sat down with your family to watch a slideshow or just go through an album or whatever, that's when everybody starts talking about, remember this, remember when, and it really does provide a connection among your family. And then if you're organizing pictures from different generations too, you're connecting generations. So you're giving a history to your family and leaving a legacy. So I think it's very important.
Yeah, I always tell people that I knew the process of putting photos in an album really mattered a lot. Well, I've always felt it mattered a lot. But when my son, the woman he's now married, when she sat down really happily on the couch next to him and willingly looked at all his baby photos, I knew that she was the right one for him. And I was really
a good fit.
that I had actually
got your stamp of approval.
Yeah, but I was glad I had the photos in a place that we could do that. So So what are some of the steps that what is the 5-step process actually that people should think about when they're organizing their printed photo collection?
Well, the first step is really to define your goal, figure out why you're doing this, what's, and it could be something as simple as like, I want to make a book, or I'm going to need pictures for a memorial service or that type of thing. But knowing, why you want to do this and what the ultimate goal is going to kind of keep you on the path when things get frustrating, or, if you have any stumbling blocks. So I definitely encourage you to determine your goal. The next step is really to gather everything together. It might seem like you just want to grab that box of photos and start going, but it's really helpful if you have a perspective of everything that you have. So that's, gathering your albums and your loose photos and everything. And we'll talk about that more. And then you starting the sorting process, which we're also going to talk about. So those are the 3 steps I think you wanted to cover today, right?
Yep. Yeah. Setting a goal, and then gathering everything, right? Doing inventory, and then the curation or the sorting process, right?
Exactly.
So remember now you can download our free cheat sheet, the 5 steps to getting your photos organized. It's again linked there. So let's jump in. So we talked about the importance of setting a goal, but let's talk more about, let's jump in and talk a little bit about, once we know the goal, how do you begin the process of getting everything together? It can be overwhelming, especially, I think, not if you have boxes or albums or things full of old albums, because who doesn't?
Right.
So how do you work on that part of the process?
So you need to, find a space that you can gather everything together. It doesn't have to be all together like that in for months at a time, but you want to get everything together so that you know what you have. For instance, you might have, I'm going to show you a few things that are in my old collection. So albums like this with the magnetic pages that are all yellowing and
Got
everything's
those.
stuck on. So we got lots of those. You might have videotapes, slides, negatives, film that you never developed, or these actually are the ones that are developed that have negatives in them. And so that's just a couple of things. You might also have boxes of photos like this, envelopes of photos, and I think Rebecca was going to show some examples of from before. Everybody's before their collection is going to look really different. When we've been helping people organize their huge photo collections for years, and again, these are some of the pictures of the befores, and you can see everybody will have something different. They might be semi-organized, they might be completely no organization. So,
Yeah, I recognize those old slide carousel, the black
yeah,
and gold slide
yeah,
boxes. I
yeah,
have a bunch of those still up in my attic as well. What's good I think what's great about showing those photographs is, I'm sure, Sandra, in all your years of doing this, most people say, like, feel like it's like their dirty secret that,
yes.
they kind of like always are so embarrassed, like, oh, but my photos are really bad. And you want to say, no, I promise they're
No,
not.
I can't tell you the number of times I've had people say to me, "Is this the worst you've ever seen?" And there's no judgment. It could. We've all tried. We tried, and sometimes it was hard to keep everything neat and orderly. But if you're going back and dealing with these printed photos now, you can get them neat and orderly.
So let's talk about how you take the inventory of
Yeah.
of the photos.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I wanted to mention too that I have a brand new guide on my website that you guys are more than welcome to take a look at and download. And it includes, it's called a Getting Started Now guide. And it includes a sample inventory and then a blank sheet, but I don't know how well you can see this, but basically I keep take an inventory of a physical photo collection by writing down what type of item it is. So this says large blue album, the date range of that album. If you can tell, it can be estimated dates. So this one says 1989 to 1993. Topic, I wrote college years because that's what the album looked like. And then this column of instructions or notes is usually where I write what we're going to do with it, like what's the plan. And so that's something you need to be thinking about when you find that album. Like, do you really want to keep this album anymore? It's got the magnetic sticky pages, it's all yellow. So maybe the goal is to select the best photos and remove them and then discard the album. I think, not everybody is into discarding things, but I think what happens when you look back at an album like that is with 30 years of perspective, you realize you don't need everything that's in the album, so and we'll talk about that when we're sorting, but that's how we do our inventory. And there's a form in my packet there if you want to.
I like the idea that you put the goal right there next to because the goals are it's not just one goal, right? With the
right, you're going to do different things. And so a lot of times we're filling out these first 3 columns first and then going back to this, and so that's when we discuss with our client, okay, what do you think with all these albums? What are you wanting to do? And we write that down, and so that it's all right there.
Yeah. So even doing that with your own collection, the idea of, take the photos out and then destroy the photo, or, eliminate the photo album afterwards is it's good to even have a written plan, especially those of you that like to cross things off a list. I tend to like to, nothing feels better than a to-do list with crossing things off, right?
Yeah.
So that seems like a great.
And in terms of getting started, when you've got all of those albums sitting there and you're the whole collection in front of you, what I tell people to start with is the bulky items, things that are going to reduce the size of your collection quickly, and then it's going to make you feel more accomplished too. So a lot of times we start with albums because they take up so much space, and if we're taking pictures out of albums, then that helps reduce the space a lot. Also old framed pictures, the frames that you have in your basement that, used to hang on a wall, but don't anymore. Or maybe you inherited them from your family, but by taking the pictures out of the frames, then you can donate or discard or take to the thrift store or whatever, the old frames. And, again, you're your physical footprint reduces quite significantly and pretty quickly, and that's super motivating.
Yeah, psychologically, that's from you go from that big table like filled with
Yeah.
so many big bulky things to start to bring that down to a manageable and a manageable side. So once they've gathered their photos, right, and they've ideally downloaded your guide and started, making that list, and that could take, well, let's just talk about that for a second. How long can that take to do that process of actually knowing where everything is and making that list? Because I don't think it's as easy. It probably takes a little longer than people might anticipate, right?
I haven't thought about it in a perspective of, doing it for your own collection, but we do it for other people's collections, right? So we'll meet with a client, we call it a discovery session, and it will be up to 3 hours. Sometimes it's like an hour or less, because they kind of already have everything together and they sort of know what they want. Other times we're there together for a few hours, kind of sifting through things just to get an idea of what there is,
Right.
and
And how often do people come back to you finding things that they didn't know they had, right? There's people should probably
that's the most common sentence I hear from my clients. I found another box,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
and that's, even people who think, well, there can't be any more boxes because we've now, like, we're moving out and I've gotten everything. I've even heard from those clients that said, wait, I did find some more photos.
Yeah.
So there's always more photos.
Yeah. So don't feel bad if you're in the middle of the process and you realize, or your sister-in-law or your mother or somebody says, "Oh, you're doing that. Let me pass off my boxes of photos,
Right.
albums."
Yeah. You can always weave them in. Yeah.
So let's talk about the sorting process. What is the most daunting step, and where do you really start now with this sorting process?
So again, I start with the bigger things, but then in terms of the sorting process with your photos, I think it's helpful, number one, just to get everything. Like if you have messy bins of photos, they're all just kind of thrown in there or whatever, even just getting them into a box like this. This is a small box. Also, I use these little puffy air things from packages to hold up my photos if it's not filling the box. But that, again, is going to make you feel a little bit better that they're, neatly in a box, and then you can kind of see what you have, and okay, I have 10 of these boxes or whatever to go through. So and then in terms of sorting the pictures, a lot of people will have these envelopes, and you might have some information on there. So I like to start with those sometimes because they're grouped together already. But you can also see a lot about photos when you look at them like this. Do you see how there's different size photos in there? And sure enough, if I kind of flip through here, I can see that these are a trip that my husband and I went on to. And then this goes into some other things that were like more home based. So, once you kind of start looking at the photos, the little things are going to pop out like that. So I'm going to take out this. We didn't really talk about the supplies you might need. Do you mind if I go into that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So there's all kinds of supplies you can use for organizing photos. These are just a few of the things that I like to have on hand. I'm going to pull them out here. So I like to have some sticky notes to just make notes to myself, and index cards of that you can use to kind of separate photos in the boxes and label them. And I like to have a regular pen and a Sharpie and a Stabilo pencil, which is to help you write on the back of photos. So what you don't want to do is write on the back of your photos with a regular ink pen or even Sharpie, because it can either bleed through the front, or it might also get ink on the next picture in the stack. So these are a couple things I use for albums, for de-albuming is what we call it. So this can help chisel the pictures off of the pages. And this, if you have pictures in pockets, you can easier get them. It's easier to get them out with these types of things. So, and then a polishing nib is always nice. And then the other thing I would recommend is using either these latex-free nitrate gloves that you can get at Archival Methods, or you can probably find them on Amazon, or what's called finger cots. And the finger cots just go on your fingers. And if you don't like wearing the gloves, I don't particularly love the gloves myself, so I use the finger cots. So I'm going to put mine on now. And they just go on your finger, and that way your the sorry, the things on your fingers, like your, what am I trying to say, Kathy?
The oils in your hand or the,
Thank
yeah,
you.
it's getting more, yep, right. So
The
you can,
oils from your fingers will not get onto your pictures.
right.
And so you won't have any fingerprints also on the pictures that way.
Right, because otherwise you have to remove if
Right.
you go to the scanning process, those fingerprints can show up easily in it.
Exactly. So, okay. So that's why. Did you have another question or anything while I'm putting
I
these
had thought too. Well, I love that. I was thinking that when you showed the blue album or the magnetic album, when you start taking those photos out, using that using your index card, right, to jot some notes down, and then you can keep those photos, like, so label that maybe the blue album and the dates, right, and what's on there, so that as you're going through, and then putting it in the box with labeled, right, so that way
Exactly.
they're later on, what you don't lose track of where do those photos come from.
Right.
That's good.
And if you're going to be scanning them, you're going to want to, like, this is a trip that my husband and I took to California. I'm just going to set this aside so we have more space. And so just by even writing on here that it's California, when I put it back in the box, I'm going to, have that handy. It's going to say right here at the end, California. And then you'll know what's sort of behind that. So it'll help you keep track of what you've done too and what you haven't done.
So can you, why don't you do an actual demonstration of, like, so this is a group of photos that you have, right, from your trip to California, and in real time, how do you decide, like, which photos to keep and which photos not? And, how do you go through a process of a stack of photos like that?
Okay. Well, and I'm thinking this is probably what we say, an inch of a stack of photos is about 100 photos. So this looks about to be about 100 photos. So right then and there, just looking at this stack and knowing, and this trip was before we had kids. And I know there's going to be a ton of scenery in here that I don't need. So I just start flipping through the photos. And, this must have been the place we stayed. I can't even read this, so I'm not sure that really matters to me. This is, and actually now here's a date. So now it's reminding me of when it was that we went. So I'm going to put that on my card, that it was the year 2001. And I like that picture because it has us in it. I don't really feel like I need that. So I just start flipping through, and, there's this is the picture when we went to The Price is Right.
Oh, how fun.
Kind of funny. So I got to keep that.
Yeah.
And then we saw this now big star. What's his name? Shamar Moore. He was on Young and the Restless, and it was right next to The Price is Right. So, okay, I'm coming across a lot of scenery. I'm going to actually, even though this is not a great photo, I want to keep this because that was the smog in Los Angeles, and it was so gross. But I don't think I need all of these. So I'm just going to kind of go quickly. I'm going to keep maybe one of these because it was at Torrey Pines, I think, and my husband loved golfing there. So we'll keep one for him. And I like this because I actually like that I took the picture of what it was that I'm looking at. So I'm going to just keep a couple of those. I don't need. Okay, now these two, I'd probably pick one that I like. They're both pretty bad. I'm going to keep this one. This is a double, so I don't need that. This is
right. Here come the doubles. You can start seeing.
Here comes the doubles, right?
Yep.
So we went to, what is it called? California Adventure, I think it was called, and it had just opened. So I'm going to keep that. And that's a duplicate. I like that one of my husband. That's cute too. I don't like that. I might keep that. This must have been a restaurant we went to. I don't really remember it, but I'm going to keep it. And then we went to the Nixon Library. And then a lot of these, it looks like, are from LA and Disney and that type of thing. I don't really think I need that. This I took because I used to work with engineering students, and it said engineer toys, so I liked that.
Are some of these memories coming back to you now that you haven't thought about since 2001, right?
Because I haven't thought about since 2001. These are like ridiculous. So scenery, like this does nothing for me. And I've already gotten this tree. And these are,
Yeah, so that question, people have a hard time imagining throwing photos away, but as you're going through this, I hope if anybody
well,
has any questions or thoughts about that, though, right? You can see now why it makes sense to throw those away. Like, why
yeah,
would
I
you?
mean, and here's the Hollywood sign, but I can't even hardly see it. So, and actually, we've been back to LA with my kids, and I have much better pictures of that.
And your kids are going to be
So
glad that they're not inheriting all those pictures.
they're going to be so glad that I've thrown this away, right? Well, they won't even know. So these are duplicates. This is where we stayed at Pebble Beach, and it cost us a fortune. You had to stay there if you were going to golf there. And so I'm going to keep that picture. Remember, I paid a fortune. I'll save another golf picture for my husband. More trees. But yeah, nobody else is going to, oh my Lord, the trees.
Yeah.
So then this is, I can tell this is when we were driving up Pacific Highway to go to the Northern California, but it's not a very good picture. So I don't think it matters. These are from our drive up. We stopped in Cambria, and this is in the Pebble Beach area. So this is where the little shops were that I was shopping at while my husband was playing at Pebble Beach.
Now, do you have any tips that for people about not getting too sidetracked in the nostalgia of looking at photos? It's one thing because you're looking at that. I bet you if those were your kids when they were babies, there'd be a whole lot more nostalgia overwhelming you than
it would. It'd be like,
right.
Oh, how cute are these? Of my kids. It is. You're right. This is probably easier than that. I also just didn't want to be sifting through pictures on live YouTube with my family. So,
no, that's a good. Yes, I agree.
But I think, I think, this is a good example of ones that because vacation photos, we all have them, with 25 years perspective on this now, I really just need the things that will remind me of what we did and the pictures of us, So here's Alcatraz. I don't think I need all the pictures of Alcatraz.
One tip sometimes I've told people too over the years is to set a timer almost and to allow yourself to reminisce after make yourself go through the process and then go back and you can reminisce later,
right.
And I'm going to spend a half hour sorting these photos and then I'll spend a half hour going back and reliving the memories or something like that, right? So that you can keep moving along.
Yep, because otherwise you're going to get sidetracked down memory lane. And I've had it happen. I've helped people, and they're like, "Oh, I love this photo. I want to send it to Aunt Janie," and they go and take a picture of it and send it, and it's really going to slow the process down a lot if you're doing that. And so I highly recommend to try. It's kind of like when you clean out your closet. You do have to be a little bit in the mood to be ruthless,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You accomplish more when you clean out your closet, right? If you're in the right mood and you're like, oh, I'm ready to get rid of some things. So, pump yourself up to get ready. So this is a double, but this is my uncle who has now passed. So I definitely want to keep that. These are really dark. It was visiting a friend in San Francisco, and that's her dog. I'm going to keep one of the dog because he's gone, and it'll remind me that we went to visit her. Doubles, just random pictures that I don't need. I mean, this is not that hard for me because they're not even good.
It makes sense to me too. Do you have a rule of thumb, almost like I call it like the 80-20 rule? You probably keep 20% and eliminate 80%, or do you use anything like that in your own work?
I don't, but I will say that you might end up going through. Well, you will always need to make more than one pass through.
Okay, that's good to know.
So I'm going to keep this because he was waiting for his golf clubs to arrive at the airport, and it was funny. I don't need these. So after going through them, you could go through them again, but already I've done way more than half where I've gotten rid of. But sometimes you'll need to go through again because you're like, well, do I really? Maybe I kept too many trees, or whatever. I kept more than I needed of this California thing, Venture Park or whatever it was called. So you could go through them again. If we have, do we have time? I can pull out some different photos to kind of give you another idea.
That you would do. Do you have some before and after samples, Rebecca, that you were going to show of like what it looks like from this before and after process?
Yeah, so some of these are and I put the during because nobody ever shows the during process, but this, like what you're seeing on my desk here, is sort of what's happening during
wow, so that carload of trunk of photos went from that to then part of that to that.
Yeah. So those were all, I was a client with all albums, and she didn't have a space for them anymore. And so we took apart all the albums and saved the best photos and went into those 3 or 4 little boxes. So,
Wow.
Yeah. So this is another one. I love that picture of the one with the, all the things in the photo envelopes, that they haven't even been taken out of the photo envelopes, right? So if you're working from those, I mean, in some ways it's nice because they're still in somewhat of an order of, when you took them, they were in the same role, so.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, they look so nice in those boxes with your dividers. And
yeah, that is the goal. So I know we just did some travel photos, but I was going to say sometimes you might have like something like this where you've got somebody handed you this old envelope of photos, right? Shake it all out. And so these are photos from my family and me kind of growing up. And so a lot of times with those, I like to sort most of the photos, like the travel ones, kind of chronologically. But you could also have sort of a box or two of just all the trips could be in one section. But it's really up to you how you want to sort. When it comes to the older photos and like heritage photos and things like that, I tend to sort more by person. And then kind of chronologically with them. So that's what makes sense to me with some of these older photos. So like that's my mother and my parents together. And so I'm just going to start some categories. And what I want to kind of show here is that some of these things, you might change your mind, like as you're going. Like right now I'm finding a lot of pictures of just my parents together. So I kind of like that as a category. This is a little article about my dad getting hit by a truck when he was a toddler. So I'm going to just set that aside because it's kind of.
And that's not uncommon, right? Just see like a little random newspaper.
Yeah.
In a pile of photos, right?
And I like to use those little. I'm not sure where I put it now. Like put this in a little archival sleeve so it doesn't get messed up and stuff. So here's my mom, my dad. This is my dad. This is my dad's parents. Also my dad and my parents together, then their family of 4, me and my sister. This is my dad. That's my dad too, and these are my mom.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're not trying to put them in any kind of date.
Right now I'm not trying to date them because really it would be really. And I'm not sure it would be as meaningful to me to have like this picture of my dad in his little tool shed type place next to the picture of, me going to prom at that same time. Like that doesn't really do anything for me. So, I'm putting just kind of family pictures here. These are my mom's and dad's wedding pictures. This is just more pictures of them. This is my dad. So I'm going kind of fast because I want to show a little bit more too. That's family. But even I can stop now and just to give you an idea of what I wanted to talk about, which is that I'm just going to put that aside. So as I was doing that, I noticed there was a lot of pictures of my dad in the military. So I kind of feel like I might take that out and put the military pictures separate for him than just his pictures.
And when you're doing that, are you taking notes? Like, are you when you start to make those decisions using like your sticky notes or your index cards, so you don't forget that you made that decision to do that?
You can if you're gonna like leave it sort of sitting out on your table or whatever. I don't like to leave most people don't have space to leave stuff out. I don't like leaving it out because it feels unsafe, like for my photos just to be sitting here and something could be like spilling them on them or something. So I would then go create a card for this and then, call this one, I would label this just my dad. And then I would say my dad in the Army for this one. And I would just write that on there. And, but that's what I was trying to point out, was that the themes and the way you want to organize are going to kind of come out as you're sorting, so you might recognize some new themes, and even when I was putting these together, these are all us kind of as a family. I sort of want to pull out the ones of just me and my sister, and just have the sister pictures separately. So and that'll, especially if you have a lot, like if you find a whole stack, then you might realize, well, maybe I should pull out all these and just have like Sandra's birthdays or something like that, because there's so many pictures of those, and so they don't get kind of lost in another pile.
Yeah.
And then I tend to go through, and I do want some chronological order. I'd like to see my mom from, early childhood to getting a little older, so I might go through again and just, and it doesn't have to be perfect. At least not for me. I mean, I think done is better than perfect.
Done is better than perfect. I just sent that note to somebody today about
and
them do for me.
A lot of these don't even have dates on the back of them, and so how would it? There's maybe some dates here, 1960. But it almost doesn't matter, because I mean, you want to get them within the right decades or whatever. And when we scan pictures, we always like to apply a date to a set of pictures so that we can put that date into the file, so that it'll sort properly if you just add them to your digital photo hub, like your Apple Photos or wherever you're going to store your photos. I don't like them to have the date of 2025. So dates are somewhat important, but they don't have to be exact.
Right. Well, just watching you do that is such a relief because I think people, when you look at those big boxes, you get panicked, and then seeing it come down to a smaller process like this makes it seem so much more manageable. And do you have a story about how, from your clients, about how organizing their photos has made a difference in their lives?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I hear a lot about that. One that stands out to me that was somewhat recent was a woman that I worked with. It must have been a couple of years ago, but she had lost both her husband and her sister during COVID, in the beginning of COVID, before it even, like literally days before the world shut down. And she lost both of them within 4 days of each other. And her sister of probably COVID, and her husband had been ill. So, she had been hit by a lot of tragedy kind of all at once. And she was moving to a smaller place. And so she called me to help her get control of her collection. And at the very end, she said to me, I knew this process would be great, so I'd have the pictures to share with my sons and my grandchildren. But what I didn't expect was it was like watching a film strip of my life. And I realized I have had such an amazing life. And I mean, it almost brought me to tears, because, for her to have that perspective while going through all this grief, it was really rewarding for me to hear that the process had been, cathartic for her, but also gave her this new perspective, or a retrospective, really, of looking back at her life and knowing that she'd really had a good life. So I love that.
Yeah, that's a great story. I mean, there's kind of a growing understanding and movement towards like life celebrations before people die. I think a number of our members are starting to work on these legacy projects, and why celebrate your life, afterwards, but there's something to celebrate now. So that's
I've always felt that way. Yeah. Why do we wait? Yep.
That's a powerful. All right. Well, I know there's been good questions coming in, so we definitely want to make sure that we take time for that. If you've loved photos and have found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. And again, Sandra has that downloadable guide from her website, so we'll link that there again to make sure that you can grab that if you want that. And so, Rebecca, I think you'll bring up those questions as we go through the process. So what do you recommend for getting over the roadblocks that stop people from organizing their photos?
Well, the most common roadblock that I hear is that they're just completely overwhelmed. So the best way I know to tackle that is to break it down into smaller steps, because it can be overwhelming to stare at that whole collection. So figure out where you're going to start. we often start with the photo albums and the frames because that takes away a lot of the book. So, start with things that are going to be easy for you to see progress. I also sometimes come across clients who feel very emotional about their photos, and that's normal because not all of our memories are happy ones, right? There's sometimes we have loss or something like that that's going to stir up some emotions. And so that kind of roadblock, I always advise to start with fun photos, fun photos that are going to, bring you joy to look through, and are going to, help you continue on and being motivated. And maybe just put the ones that are more painful, put those ones aside for now, and start with the fun things that are going to make you feel good.
Leanne asks, what do you suggest to do with negatives?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think you'll find people with differing opinions about negatives. Negatives are the true original. They are the original source. So if you're going to be scanning your photos, if you scan from the negative, you might get a, slightly better scan than you would from a print. So if they were like my wedding negatives, or, the negatives of, photographer took pictures of my child right after they were born or something like that, then I might want to scan from the negatives. But I don't really advise it from, these stacks of photos that you have. You're not going to necessarily, like, for example, the pictures that we just went through. If I had the negatives also, it would have been a lot harder to figure out which ones I don't want, right? Because of all those strips, and they're in a negative image, so I can't really see them very well. So we find it much easier to sort the actual printed photos. And I personally have chosen to discard a lot of my negatives because I don't think I'll ever go back to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is 2 points of view on that. I agree.
Yeah.
And, they are the original. And so for the ones where you need the original, that's save those negatives. And then for like you said, the California trip, to have saved all those negatives.
Yeah, that's not going to do it. And those aren't important enough pictures for me to go back to the negative to scan either. And again, when you go through those negatives, there's 4 images on a strip, and you can't really see what they all are. So you're then scanning all those tree pictures that I didn't need, right? What about you, Cathi? What have you done with your negatives?
I've done before I understood what I know now, I did throw away. I have some regret that I didn't, when I started scrapbooking and started doing all this, I used to throw all the negatives away because I thought, why am I keeping all these? In retrospect, I wish I could go back for some of those, but I feel the same way that you do. The ones that are the photos that I would want to reduplicate over and over again, because, and that's the other thing people don't understand. Like you lose the quality the more times that you change it. But for the most part, I have the same opinion on casual family photos, I guess is the way. Professional photographers, it's a whole different situation when, it's their life's work and things like that. So
yeah, for really special photos, I've definitely hung on to them, and I've scanned from the the negative instead of the prints.
Lisa said, what brand of finger covers are you using or recommend?
Oh, these? The ones I was just taking off. They're called finger cuts. You can buy them on Amazon. That's where I found them. And
finger cuts, C-U-P-S?
Cots, C-O-T-S.
C-O-T-S. Okay, finger cuts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And you can get them. And I just like them. They're a little easier for me than the whole glove. So.
When you're working with your clients, I know this is always a mystery for people. Like, how can you organize somebody else's photos? And it's like, it's really not that hard. But Sandra, you've worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photos over many, many years. So how do you make those decisions for your clients?
We get to know our clients first, and we'll go through a stack like that and say, okay, we'll show them how we cull and what we would normally do, and usually they're like, yeah, that's great, I love that. And if they they want to save more, then it's good for us to figure that out at that point. We tend to say that we save more than even you might, because sometimes we don't know every person that we see. We get to know the families, but then you're going to have friends and we're not going to know that, oh, those were the friends in high school that you like. You don't even remember their names anymore. Like, you didn't need that, but we're not going to know that. So we probably save a little bit more than somebody would if they were doing it themselves. But we can get done so much faster because we're not emotionally tied to the photos, but we'll save things like, we get rid of things like excess scenery and things like that, like you saw me do with my California trip. But we, of course, save things that have like cars and houses and barns. And, and these are things that could be important. We find out if people, go to the same place every summer for a vacation. So we know, and we'll ask them, are there pictures we're going to see in your collection that we, either need to be sure to save or don't save? And sure enough, they'll always tell you, so, like in terms of, oh, well, if you see a lot of pictures, into the same lake house every year, I don't need that many pictures of it, So, or Christmas trees. Every year you take a picture of your Christmas tree and it looks exactly the same, right? We talk to people about that, and so that we
then
can.
Carrie asked, followed up with it. What do you do with the photos that are not trash, but not your favorites, but you want to keep them?
Yeah, I kind of keep them in like the back of the stack, so and especially if you're going to be scanning them, what I tend to do is take the where's the California stuff. This was the ones. Let's just say I had a few. I would turn them around and I'd face the back of the stack. So I would have, these are the pictures you're going to keep, and they face forward in the box, and then these are the ones you're going to get. You want to keep, but you don't necessarily want to digitize. Then I turn them around, and that way when you scan them, you'll remember, oh, I don't need to scan these. Or you can, if you have somebody else scan them, you can tell them just ignore these ones. So
that's a really good point too. I think what we try to tell people a lot of times is that we believe you should scan your curated collection. Don't scan all your photos and then try and curate once they've been scanned. Right? Do you agree with that? Like, it's better to, do you scan you organize before you scan? That way there's photos you choose not to scan. Yeah. And so that's,
and I can tell you from just my experience of sometimes we, in addition to photos and slides and stuff, we'll get people's CDs from other scanning companies that they did maybe 10 years ago or 5 years ago. And it's usually just a big digital mess. And so, we don't want that. We want your scans to be in order. So we don't need two messes to clean up, right? We don't want to take the messy photos and then scan them and then have messy digital photos. So we organize the printed photos first, and then they're organized as they're, as they're getting scanned.
And then do you ever put the same picture in more than one file? For example, the sister, you kind of had the sister photos, and then, how do you manage that?
If that was something like for these older photos that, you only have a limited number of photos from the at least for me, growing up, I don't have that many pictures. And so if there are like a couple, some like heritage originals, like if you have your mom's wedding photo and there's two of them, then sure, you can, split up with you and your sister or whatever. But for the most part, if you're digitizing your photos, those are the photos that you're going to use to make a book or put in a slideshow. So a lot of times I don't think the duplicates are necessary, but some people want to keep the heritage duplicates.
Now here's a great question. On the back of those pictures, when you take them from those sticky albums and you're going to scan them, what do you do with those? Like, how do you keep those clean so that you don't have all that glue on everything?
There are adhesive removers you can use, but I tend to just, what I think is much faster and easier is using you can buy archival paper. And so if this was, let's say this was really sticky, I'll just, stick this behind it and then go on to the next picture. So sometimes it'll just, stick to it, and that's fine. But I find that easier than having to remove all the adhesive.
Is there a removal tool, like something that you can use to remove the adhesive? Like one of the, it's like a little flat, like a spatula almost, right?
Yeah, so I use a spatula, which I think I showed you before. There's also, so I use the spatula and just kind of, if it's in an album, you can, let me just grab one. Grab a page that was coming out of the album. And again, I already took my finger cuts off, but you can kind of lift it and see if it's going to come out. And if it doesn't, you can start to use like a little spatula to sort of dig under there. And just slide it in there and you can see it's actually, this is like a lovely example.
That is a good example. Yeah, sometimes
I didn't plan this, but but you can also sort of, so once you've got it under, you want to just keep chiseling around. There's also, you can see how long this can take sometimes if they're really stuck on. So there's also a product that I use a lot that's called Undo. And this, you can actually just put some of the liquid in here, the remover, and it will dissolve the adhesive, and it's not harmful to your photos. So that's another way to do it.
All right. Well, this has been so much fun. I hope it's really fun doing this live. Great job, Sandra. Amazing job. And everybody can see her work studio there. Thank you so much for the great questions that we've had from everything. If you'd like to see a part 2 in a series, like we start doing more live things, please drop us a note in the chat and let us know what are some things, other like live demonstrations you'd like us to take you through. And also, we have a great, if you're interested in getting your own photos organized, we have a great photo manager and training program with the photo managers where we send you videos, and you have different, you join a group for a whole year, and we have, accountability things, and it takes you both through your printed and your negative photos. So you can find that on our website. And also, if you want help with getting your photos organized and working with a pro like Sandra, go to the website, find a pro, and all our certified members. So they've been vetted, they've gone through a certification program, best practices. In fact, I'm sure Sandra's been helping redo our certification as one of our subject matter experts. And you can hire a pro who will do this job for you, which could make it a lot easier and make sure that it actually happens. And so next month, also, we do have, every September, we do Save Your Photos Month. But based on what's happened with all the fires and then the terrible flooding, and it's not, not just North Carolina right now in Kentucky. I mean, there's flooding everywhere. One of the women who works for me, she's been able to leave her house for 5 days because she lives up on a hill. But Isabel, their house is surrounded by water, and they haven't been able to go out and even get groceries. So, there's a lot of issues happening, and people are worried about their photos and their keepsake items. So we're spending a whole week. It's called Save Your Photos Week. So look for that. We'll be doing a live webinar every day. And again, we'll take you through lots of different, have subject matter experts. It's all free. And so we're excited to continue to bring you quality programming. So again, please subscribe and hit the to be notified when we have future videos. And so thank you, everybody. Sandra, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I did want to say I haven't been able to read all the comments while we were doing this, but I thought I saw something fly by that asked how to get my Getting Started Now guide if you're already like on my email list. So I did actually send that out, but you might not have gotten it or it went to spam. But you can just email me at sandra@infinityphotosolutions.com, and I will be happy to give it to you.
And we have Colleen is in our photo manager and training program, and she loves it. So great, thank you. Thank you for that. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time, and we're glad to continue to bring you this great training. And people like Sandra and the photo managers that are part of our community give so abundantly of their expertise, and it's a real work of passion. I know for Sandra, right? It's a hard job.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah. And thank you, Rebecca, behind the scenes, making it all work for us because it's not just us, right? So, okay, everybody, take care.